of history's greatest civilizations thrived for almost 3,000 years along the winding Nile River in northeast Africa. However, once Egypt was conquered by the Greeks, then the Romans, and eventually the Muslims, the ancient civilization's glory was buried underneath layers of these many civilizations, only to resurface centuries later as archaeologists and historians embrace the study known as Egyptology. Although ancient Egypt is long gone, researchers continue to unearth its wonders. What have archaeologists discovered this time around? What makes it so terrifying? Join us today as we bring you a frightening new discovery in Egypt by scientists that will change everything. The secret chamber in the Pyramid of Giza is one of the mysteries that has puzzled researchers for decades. If you were to rent an apartment and discover a hidden room inside another, you may wonder what it was used for too. The pharaohs of ancient Egypt were seen as intermediaries between humans and the gods. As such, they were honoured with the building of some of the world's most impressive man-made structures, including the iconic pyramids. In fact, the pyramids had such close ties to the kings that the smooth, angled sides were meant to aid the king's soul in ascending to heaven and joining the gods, particularly the sun god Ra. So why exactly did they build those pyramids? The ancient Egyptians believed that the king's spirit, known as Ka, remained in his body after death. In order to properly care for the king's spirit, his body was mummified and he was buried with all the trappings of royalty, including gold utensils, food, furniture, and other tributes. Despite pyramids being constructed from the start of the Old Kingdom to the end of the Ptolemaic period in the 4th century AD, the zenith of pyramid construction occurred in the late 3rd dynasty and lasted until around the 6th dynasty, circa 2325 BC. The Giza pyramid is one of the most well-known pyramids. There are 3 primary chambers that we know about in the Giza pyramid: the King's Chamber, the Queen's Chamber, and an underground chamber that seems incomplete. It is thought to be the tomb of one of the early pharaohs of Egypt, King Khufu. There is also the Grand Gallery, a 40.27 metre long corridor that leads to the King's Chamber. Scientists set out to investigate the inside structure of a pyramid to determine whether there were any previously unknown chambers, caverns, tunnels, passageways, or other structures. They employed a technique called the cosmic muography, and what they discovered created more concerns than answers, including certain sections that should have been solid rocks that were noticeably empty. They uncovered a large hole estimated to be between 30 and 40 metres long. What confused the experts was the purpose of this secret room, which is clearly built in a special location. There have been rumours that it holds another tomb, or perhaps gold. One of the reasons archaeologists were intrigued was because the Giza pyramid is essentially empty of items that people were commonly buried with. This may have been due to the acts of tomb robbers, but they couldn't touch the enormous void, so whatever it originally held must remain intact. Now, can you picture whales splashing on the sweeping sand dunes when you think of the Sahara Desert, even though it's extremely unlikely because whales can't live anywhere than the ocean? There is, however, proof that the modern whale's ancestors swam freely in the hot African desert. In 1902, a group of geologists led their camels into a region in the western desert of Egypt. Sandstone boulders were shaped into odd forms where the wind was very strong, and the area would gleam like gold in the moonlight at night. There is a neighbouring hill called the Mountain of Hell due to its scorching summer temperatures. But if someone told you there were whale skeletons in this dry valley, would you not believe them? The vertebrae of the longer skeletons were as thick as logs used for campfires, and the skeletons themselves were 50 feet long. They dated back 37 million years to a time when this area and all of northern Egypt were covered by a shallow tropical sea. Although the geologists weren't aware of it at the time, the prehistoric specimen would provide answers to one of evolution's most vexing questions: how whales became whales. The presence of feet in these long-dead whales was one piece of information. Researchers had assumed whales were once land creatures that had adapted to life in the sea over many millions of years by gradually losing their hind legs. For example, modern whales retain certain bones from their ancestral hind legs, vestigial hind legs. But this transition was poorly represented in the fossil record until paleontologists unearthed hundreds of whale fossils buried in Wadi Hitan, where they discovered bones such as legs and knees. Although other older specimens of footed whales have been identified, Wadi Hitans are unrivaled in terms of their number and quality of preservation. The valley, which is roughly a 3-hour drive from Cairo, is now a UNESCO World Heritage Site that attracts over 14,000 visitors each year. Paleontologists believe the whale's predecessors were deer or pig-like scavengers who lived near the water. They began spending more time in the water some 55 million years ago, first eating dead fish near the shore and then chasing food in the shallows and then wading deeper. As they did, some of them gained features that helped hunting in water. They grew in size as they no longer had to bear their entire body weight at sea, their backbones elongating and their rib cages expanding. The majority of the fossils in the valley belong to one of two groups. The relatively diminutive but strongly muscled Basilosaurus was the gigantic with an almost ear-like body. Dorudon resembled a modern whale until its mouth opened, revealing a jaw laced with serrated knives. However, it is not the end of the mysteries that have been uncovered by Egyptologists, and what comes next is not for the weak of heart. What about some macabre mummy juice to wash it all down? It all began when builders in the ancient port city of the Mediterranean discovered a black granite tomb 16 feet beneath while constructing an apartment complex. As soon as word got out that the tomb was almost 2,000 years old, it became a viral sensation. The ghastly photos of the 3 skeletons bobbing in the mucky soup sparked urban legends that the mummy juice had healing or supernatural capabilities, with residents hoping to make a fast buck by bottling and selling the substance. Others were concerned that the unusual colour indicated the presence of toxic substances like mercury. Despite concerns that breaking up the massive black granite sarcophagus might set off an ancient curse, it was unearthed and opened. Furthermore, it was believed by some to hold the remains of Alexander the Great, the city's founder. However, this theory was swiftly dispelled by Dr. Mustafa Waziri, General Secretary of the Supreme Council at Antiquities. He argued instead that the tomb belonged to a priest. However, the discovery of probable arrow damage to one of the skulls indicates that the bones most likely belonged to military leaders, according to an Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities statement. So, what exactly was this mummy juice, and did it have supernatural implications? Unfortunately, no. Authorities discovered the liquid was not mummy juice containing an elixir of life or red mercury, but something far more mundane and less exciting: sewage water. Waziri said the skeletons had partially disintegrated because switch water from a nearby building had leaked into the sarcophagus through a small crack in one side. What about the curses associated with the opening of antique coffins? Waziri stated he was the first to put his head inside the sarcophagus, and evidently nothing occurred to him, so either they were simply rumours or this particular coffin had no curses to deliver. Archaeologists have reported what may be the biggest find of the century: the location of ancient Egypt's lost labyrinth. Do you enjoy mysteries? Egypt is undoubtedly a land of secrets. If there is one place on earth that is ripe with secrets, it is Egypt. Some of them have been there for thousands of years, yet we still haven't figured them out. Nonetheless, the labyrinth of Hawara may have provided the answer to one of these mysteries at long last. Below the sands of a well-known pyramid site, archaeologists discovered what they believed to be the remnants of the legendary labyrinth. During the 5th century BC, legendary historian Herodotus claimed to have counted 3,000 chambers inside this virtually mystical building that also served as a burial complex. He and other authors, such as Strabo, had the opportunity to tour the labyrinth when it was at its prime. The labyrinth is said to be an incredible underground structure that may hold the secret to the history of mankind. It is rumoured that there we might unearth evidence of ancient civilizations, empires, and kings who ruled the world before history as we know it began. According to Herodotus, the labyrinth was located somewhat above the Lake of Moeris and approximately opposite the City of Crocodiles. Before we get into what scientists discovered in Hawara, take Herodotus's description of the breathtakingly enigmatic labyrinth. This I've actually seen a work beyond words. For if anyone put together the buildings of the Greeks and displayed of their labours, they would seem lesser in both effort and expense to this labyrinth. Even the pyramids are beyond words, and each was equal to many and mighty works of the Greeks. yet the labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids. Despite being buried for millennia, scholars have pieced together a description of the labyrinth based on writings from history. They have determined that the complex consisted of 12 interconnected courts, 6 on the north side and 6 on the south, all of which were connected by gates. There was a wall around the entire complex, and within it were 2 types of chambers, those below ground and those above. There was also a massive stone roof constructed from the same materials as the walls, which were also covered with figures. Each court was enclosed by the white stone pillars that were skillfully joined together, and at the center of the maze, a massive pyramid with carved human figures stood guard. The mysterious underground complex could now be found around 100 kilometers from Cairo in Hawara. It was visited by a group of Belgian experts who explored the site using ground-penetrating technology. They were able to corroborate the presence of the subterranean temple near Amenemhat's III pyramid. While some may question that the lost labyrinth has finally been discovered, the expedition's findings conclusively demonstrate the presence of grid-like and organized structures deep beneath the sand, at levels considerably deeper than previously explored. Let us know what you think of the lost labyrinth of ancient Egypt in the comments section below.
في بلادنا نقولوا صافا سكراف صافا با نقولوا الحمد لله كيما العادة باش تيفيتي لا فيريتي تبقى وحدة الارطان باش تمشي الكاميون طيح مخو كومبان لا باس عمي البوليس نحمي في اوروبا ورجعنا بولي راي مخصوصة اورو مخصوصة دوفيس نحمي في اوروبا ورجعنا نوليو
يقول لا تنكسف ولا تنخ